No, slides. I think there's a bit of confusion on names, so sorry for moonlighting under two different aliases, but I'm just in that process of moving from my maiden name to my married name. But anyway, so I'm Rhiannon Jones. I'm at the CBI in the tax and fiscal team. We really welcome today's examination. I think it's really great to have the variety of different disciplines here, bringing together their different experiences from both the UK and obviously around the world, and hopefully with a shared desire to get to some workable solutions. I'll concentrate on tax, but the CBI has put in representations to the Taylor Review on the wider subject that this covers. So I think we know that tax changes a lot, and I don't know whether for those that work in tax, whether that's what we find interesting or keeps us occupied, but to me it doesn't seem like a desirable policy in itself. And I think on this policy area in particular, we've seen a lot of piecemeal change, we've seen aborted change, and I think we're fairly likely to see some other further change. And I think that with all of this change, what actually we should be doing, and I think that's where some of us on the panel agree, is that it should be underpinned by a holistic review and think about the objectives behind policy and how we identify and then tax different ways of working. So to do this, we've proposed 6 principles that a tax review should be informed by, and I'll run through those 6 principles now. Firstly, flexible and fair, and I think that any changes to tax system need to be supportive of flexibility in the labour market. It's one of the things that we hear from business. It's invaluable to the strength of the UK economy. It underpins job creation, business investment, and our competitiveness to attract both global talent and foreign direct investment. But fairness in terms of the way in which individuals are treated and opportunities for those individuals are equally important, and businesses do realise that, and I think there is some good practice by which they can learn from each other. So I think from our perspective, work can be both flexible and fair. It doesn't need to be one or the other, and a tax system certainly shouldn't work against each of those ideals. Second is entrepreneurial. It's probably no surprise that a business organisation wants to see a tax system that supports an entrepreneurial spirit to spur growth in the economy. We want to see one that encourages employers to take on more employees, whether that's their first employee or further, and also to support those new entrants and startups to get on and do business in the UK. I don't think that is about incentivising one employment model over the other, unless we're really clear on that as the policy objective. So I think what that means is that we need a sophisticated approach to identifying the genuine self-employed, and then think about how we want to make it easier to go on and help those to, whether it's to employ more people, to make investment, or even to export around the globe. And I think we need to focus on what that support looks like, and it's not necessarily the tax system that would do that best to help those individuals go about growing. Thirdly, with any change, it needs to be affordable, so that both on the tax and the benefits side, it needs to be sustainable as well. I think Treasury have already identified the threat to sustainability of public finances from what it cites as the increase in self-employment. Our initial analysis suggests that actually the NICS receipts have actually remained steady, and that would be probably the one area that you might expect to see some erosion. But as Helen already identified, actually the cost of that doesn't really show the cost of the policy, which is obviously quite high to tax employed and self-employed differently. So what we say is you can't ignore the threat, but we would suggest that actually there's some time. I don't think that tax revenues are falling off a cliff edge, and that all stakeholders need to be part of a conversation in getting to a better policy solution. And obviously sudden tax changes are quite hard to absorb, and from a business perspective at the moment, that cumulative burden of different policies is beginning to bite. Fourthly, it will be of no surprise simplicity, and we have the Office of Tax Simplification here, so we really support that, and I think that's something that we should aspire to with any change to the tax system to bring about greater clarity. As I think we've already discussed, there are no bright lines or definitions in terms of determining whether someone's employed or self-employed, whether for employment purposes or for tax purposes. But I think we'd all agree that those that are essentially employees should be identified as such, and it's really a question of where that dividing line falls and how you actually go about whether setting that specifically as a line or as some factors. I think moving to a set of definitions, as we've discussed, would probably actually prolong some of the uncertainty. I think it sounds on the one hand that moving to some new definitions would be good, but actually you will probably have some of the same difficulties as you encounter today, albeit about new boundaries as opposed to the old boundaries. Certainly from the CBI perspective, we thought about whether you could look at applying from the tax perspective a gateway, whether that would be some sort of indicators that are quite easy on a quantitative sort of basis, so that the majority would know their status, but that behind that, for the more complex cases, you could look to case law. But of course, that's working with the current system, and actually, we might be wanting to think a bit more radically. Fifth is about efficiency, and it really follows on from that point about simplicity. And I think that the complexity at the heart of the system right now actually eats into both HMRC's resources and also business resources, whether it's the engagers or also the individuals as well. And so I think we really need to think carefully, if we move to a new system, whether all stakeholders involved could actually cope with a new system, and whether there might be a better way. As I said, a lot of the difficulty is in coming to a decision. It's time consuming. You have to look at it on an individual level. You also then need to look at it on an arrangement by arrangement basis. It's about the facts and circumstances of each arrangement. And that's pretty time consuming given the number of self-employed in the UK. So I think any solution really needs to think about that and reduce the administrative burden, we'd say, for all stakeholders, not just business, but also for HMRC and the individuals. And finally, the sixth principle, I guess, could be described as high tech. I think there is an opportunity to look to technology to ease the burden. I don't think technology has all of the solutions, and particularly not in the current system. I think moving from putting case law into an algorithm is pretty inherent in difficulty. But probably, I think making tax digital, when that becomes a reality, I think there are some extensions from that could help in this area. And I wondered whether actually in this room we're maybe missing some of the software developers to have this comprehensive dialogue on this. And inevitably, I think with technology, I think there would need to be safeguards in place so that individuals and HMRC could challenge particular outcomes or decisions, and also the ability to reclaim tax if it has been charged differently. And as we know with government IT systems, I think we need to have some patience and also realistic time. So that concludes the 6 principles, and obviously business looks forward to being part of the ongoing dialogue.